G'day, I'm here at Nambucca Heads, and we were walking along here and stumbled across an interesting story, and it has to do with Burke, would you believe? There's a connection between this piece of water here and Burke, and I'll tell you the story. In fact, this year is the 100th anniversary of Lawson's death, Henry Lawson's death. When Henry Lawson arrived in Burke, the unions were forming there, and the streets of Burke were full of union leaders. Among them was a man called William Lane. He was a utopian socialist, and he had dreams of creating a perfect Australia, a new Australia. But would you believe he wanted to take people all the way from here, because he was disillusioned with the way the unions were going in Australia. And he was going to take them all the way across the Pacific Ocean to Paraguay to start an ideal new Australia in 1893. Well, the connection to this spot is that right there, the Copenhagen shipping company, I think it was shipbuilding company, built a ship called the Royal Tar, and it was used by the New Australian movement to take two troops to Paraguay with people hoping for a better Australia. If only we could find a nice place free of governments and restrictions, then we could create an ideal place. And that's not a new message, is it? People probably through history have longed to find and create a new place. So it seemed like a good idea, although Lawson himself was sceptical about what it was going to do. He called it the cruel new Australian star, drew off the bravest and the best. Well, Lane took a group with him, and amongst them was none other than Mary Gilmore, the poet, and they headed off to South America. Well, the settlement didn't last very long. They had all sorts of problems, issues, mostly because they couldn't get on amongst themselves, which is always the problem when you try to start an ideal thing. It's the people, it's the problem. You take yourself with you. And I guess as a Christian, I think, Jesus talked about if you want to start something really new, you've got to first of all change the people from the inside out. So poor old William Lane, bless his heart, he tried really hard, but he came back too disillusioned. And oddly enough, a couple of years ago, I got a phone call, would you believe, from a lady, her name was Pixie something, and she was actually a descendant of some of the people who'd gone from Australia to Paraguay to start the ideal settlement. And I heard another report a little earlier than that, there was a group of them still there, Australians living in Paraguay after 100 years, who would play cricket and drink tea. So a few hung on, but most came back sort of realising that it's one thing to have the ideal, but it's a much harder thing to bring the reality. And I think that's why Jesus said, you've got to begin with the human heart. You've got to change the human heart. You've got to have people who are forgiving. Out along the rock wall there's a whole lot of people who've painted things on the rocks for their friends or loved ones who passed away and things, or they want to put a wise saying there. And we sat down, and the rock right in front of us had a saying from Mahatma Gandhi, and it said, be the kind of person you want the world to be like, like if you be the change yourself. Now, that's a great piece of wisdom, and I can only really think of one person in all of history who actually pulled that off. And I'll leave you to think about that one. You probably know who I mean. Here I am, the Outback historian, sitting on a rock in Nambucca Heads.